Just a heads up, today's episode doesn't get into anything graphic, but should be said that we do discuss some mature themes.
Sumptuous.
Thank you. Great
Also
work.
horrifying and gory.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Book Isn't Necessarily Better, a podcast put on by the Community Library Network in North Idaho, where we talk about books and the many adaptations that have been made from them. I'm your host, Michaela.
And I'm Roxanne.
And today we're talking about a very interesting book and movie and human being. We're talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
So it came out in 1962, written by Ken Kesey, who is from this part of the universe.
True.
Would you call Oregon?
The first time I encountered this book was in a class called Northwest Writers.
Okay.
So I'm going to count him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Written by Ken Kesey, who was born in 1935 in I assume it's pronounced La Junta, Colorado, but he grew up in Springfield, Oregon. He went to the University of Oregon. He got married during this time, and he stayed married to the same woman his entire life.
He did.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that
He did lots of crazy stuff.
Yeah, and had a kid with another woman.
That he named Sunshine.
I know, and who's Jerry Garcia's stepdaughter.
We have a lot to talk about.
There's so much to talk about.
So, yes, he did get married when he was in college, and he then did a graduate fellowship writing program at Stanford University. During this time, to make extra money, and I remember I used to do this during my college days, I'd sign up for, not the same as he does, but I would sign up for, psychology participants. So they'd,
clinical trials.
Yeah, they'd have you, one time it was I had to stand in a room in front of people for 5 minutes and then give a speech versus I had to walk into a room cold and give a speech. And I was like, tricks on you, I'm not shy. It was to test anxiety levels.
Oh, mine would have been tricks on you. My anxiety is the same no matter what way I do it.
My anxiety is high. So yeah, and they were always fun. You get a gift card to Dunn Brothers or so, Starbucks. But this was a little different because in the 1950s, 1960s,
yeah.
the CIA was basically testing out how test subjects would respond to LSDs or acid.
And mescaline.
And I'm a square. I don't really know what mescaline is.
Me either. Psychedelic drugs. All of these,
okay.
I think, are just in that realm.
How could they use it as, truth serums, or
right.
How could they use it in military ways? And so they had this program called MK Ultra.
Right.
Which I think they talk about in Stranger Things.
I think now it's pretty well known.
It totally sounds made up, but it was a real program.
But it's real, yeah.
They would test people and how they reacted to different psychedelics.
And they didn't know that that's what was being tested, correct?
It definitely was unethical.
Yeah.
There's
some shady stuff going on.
Yeah. We have to talk to my dad. So my dad went to Stanford, and he would have been at Stanford during the same time as Ken Kesey, but I highly doubt that they would have run in the same circles. But I think my dad was, playing with the computers that are as big as a garage. Because he was in mathematics.
That makes sense. But you still have to be like, Bill, how many clinical trials did you do at Stanford?
I know. Were you in the prison experiment?
That's about the right time, too, huh? Probably a little bit early.
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny, because I was going to recommend that as something to watch if you enjoy this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
Can I also say, real quick, all this is going on. However, at the same time, Ken Kesey is applying for and continuously being rejected for fellowships at Stanford. Wallace Stegner, who you probably recognize the name, but maybe not necessarily why. He's a writer. He won a Pulitzer Prize for Angel of Repose. He was the fellowship director, English department director guy at the
Stanford.
time. Mm-hmm. And he thought of Ken Kesey as a highly talented illiterate who threatened civilization and intellectualism and sobriety. And so he just continually shot down his applications to keep studying there.
Well, how did he finally get in?
he was in, but he was applying for, like, fellowships where they would pay him to, like, be
Right.
there and write.
Oh, is that what a fellowship means?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Wallace Stegner was just like, nope. But eventually, he did get a fellowship there.
He clawed his way into their hearts.
He did, yeah. With his weird antics. So, okay, let's get back to the weird antics.
Yeah, so he was doing these, like, clinical trials on LSD and acid. He found out he loves the stuff. But during this time, he also was working as a nurse's aide in a psychiatric hospital.
A veterans hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is what inspired him to write a little book that he started in 1960 called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And when it came out in 1962, it became an immediate smash hit. So it's like Great Gatsby level fame. Like,
Right.
he comes out of nowhere in 1962. He is super famous. And then what does he go on to do?
Sorry, I was going to say, it's not quite like Gatsby, because Gatsby was, like, totally forgotten when Fitzgerald wrote it. And it got famous later.
Oh, I meant, but Gatsby was famous for his first book, This Side of Paradise.
I gotcha.
He was an overnight sensation.
I gotcha. Okay, with
Yeah.
you. Okay, so after...
Oh, I'm sorry. I said Gatsby. I meant to say
know.
Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald became an overnight sensation with This Side of Paradise, not Gatsby.
Okay,
Boom.
we're
Okay.
there.
Boom, I
And-
roasted myself.
And all of his later novels were not nearly so much of a success.
Yeah, they were popular, but not the success that it was.
Right. Also like Fitzgerald. So, he gets out of Stanford. He's really into the LSD at this
Loves
point.
it.
Loves it. A real big fan. So, he and a bunch of his friends form, I'm going to call it
Posse.
a gang called the Merry Pranksters. And they buy a bus. Roxanne is so disgusted. They buy a bus. They paint it in the most lurid colors and patterns available to them. One of the friends christens it Further, but Furthur, Further, because that's their destination.
I don't know why I find this so deeply annoying.
I think it's so funny that you find... I think it's hilarious.
It's like annoys me on a really deep level.
This is, I think part of the thing is, you can only do this if you're like a trust fund kid.
Yeah, I think that's the... So, like, my mom grew up in San Francisco, and so she was a young woman during the Haight-Ashbury of it all. And I was like, oh my god, Mom, you were in the center of it. You grew up there. And she's like, yeah, but I was from a low-income neighborhood. Like, I had to go to work. I couldn't hang around in the park on a Wednesday. So she's like, yeah, only rich kids could be real hippies. She's like, I had to go to work, but on weekends, I got to wear the fun clothes and I went to concerts.
Right.
I'm like, oh yeah. So that kind of puts things in perspective. It just like...
Yeah.
I don't know what about it just makes me want to roll my eyes so hard.
As someone who works in the service or who has worked in the service industry in the past, can you imagine just taking off for a couple of years on a bus and being like, see you later, I don't know how I'm going to make money or live or whatever, but it's
I guess
fine.
they would also do that
Yeah.
because it was, very freewheeling, but like the people who could really commit usually had
Yeah. They
mommy
came
or
from
daddy's money. Yeah.
For sure. So these guys in 1964, they get on this psychedelic bus named Further. They start driving around the United States in what they basically called like a reverse pioneer order. So they were like reversing the Manifest Destiny sort of journey, and searching for intersubjectivity, which is basically, it's like their code for hive mind on drugs.
I think another reason I find this annoying is like the very like college freshman-ness of it all.
It is.
Like, they just read Vonnegut for the first time. Or they're like, have you ever heard of Ayn Rand? And it's just...
They're the first people who have discovered this, and it's totally new, and it's very cool, and
It
they're
just
the only
exhausts
ones.
me. I don't know.
The energy of it all is pretty intense.
It's very, like, sophomoric
Yeah.
energy.
Okay.
Wow, I'm so much more annoyed than I thought I was.
It's so fun. Oh my gosh, I wish people could see your face. You're very, very upset about this. Okay. So they're on the bus called Further.
Okay.
They're heading around to like all of these different places and going to festivals. They're doing what they call acid tests, which is basically just lacing Kool-Aid with acid or LSD or whatever types of drugs they had, and then just kind of handing out solo cups, right? And
For people to drink the Kool-Aid.
for people to drink. It's literally, I think this is part of the reason why drinking the Kool-Aid is such a, not the only, obviously, there's
Yeah.
Jonestown, but...
Well, actually, they drank Flavor-Aid, not Kool-Aid, just so you know.
Dear me. The reason I say Kool-Aid is because...
Well, people say to drink the Kool-Aid.
Right.
Right, but they actually drank Flavor-Aid in Jonestown.
Okay. Oh, you're talking about Jonestown. I'm like, these guys are drinking Kool-Aid. What is
No, yeah, in Jonestown, they
Okay.
drank Flavor-Aid. So really you should say...
That's like the
Did
discount.
you drink the Flavor-Aid? Yeah, he's being cheap.
Okay. Okay, so they're handing out solo cups full of Kool-Aid. At the time, this is a book that's been on my list for a really long time. There's a book about this called The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe.
Yeah.
He's a journalist. He went around with them for a couple of weeks, documented all of this crazy stuff, wrote a book about it. This book is also very famous.
And we have it in our collection.
We do. It's about Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters.
Merry Pranksters. Oh my
I know.
God.
Here's my favorite part about this. They all had, like, nicknames.
Of course they did.
Okay. So, Ken Kesey is the chief, Captain Flag, or Swashbuckler. You're so annoyed. Their driver was named Sir Speed Limit.
That's fun.
That's funny. You
That's
gotta
fun.
admit that's funny.
Okay.
Okay. And then others, all of them have, like, really funny names, but some of them include, like, Sometimes Missing,
Okay, that's fun.
Gretchen Fetchin,
That's fun.
which is funny. Okay, my mom was gonna name me Gretchen, and she didn't. And it's like,
I could see you as a Gretchen.
it's the travesty of my life that I'm not named Gretchen.
Gretchen's a perfect librarian name.
Yep.
You totally look like a Gretchen.
Thank you. I've been telling her this for almost 30 years, you guys.
Kind of love that name.
I kind of love it. But she used to call me Gretchen when I would get in a bad mood.
Gretchen, that's
Gretchen. So this is Gretchen Fetchin.
Cute.
And then Cadaverous Cowboy. Those are
Yeah.
just some of my favorite weird things that they were calling themselves.
I bet that Cadaverous Cowboy uses less of the toilet paper and doesn't replace the roll.
Yeah, no.
He seems like
He seems like a TP. I was trying to think of like a cool...
incompetent.
Yeah, yeah. He seems like his bathroom etiquette is probably not up to par.
No.
Okay. So here's the part where Roxanne is going to get even more annoyed than she already is right now. It's so funny.
I'm settling in.
Okay. So they're doing all this stuff. They're on this crazy bus, handing out drugs to whomever wants to drink the Kool-Aid, Flavor-Aid, whatever it was. Ken Kesey gets arrested for possession of marijuana, which is hilarious because he's got a bunch of other stuff on him. I don't know how it was just the marijuana he got arrested for.
What? Well, actually, LSD wasn't illegal
Seriously?
until like a certain point.
Okay, so maybe this is why.
It could be pre-legality.
I'll have to look. Okay.
Okay.
That's so maybe. So he just gets arrested for marijuana possession. So in order to not go to jail for drug possession, he fakes his own death. He
How? I knew this, but I didn't know how.
so he left his car like on the side of a cliff and had his friends write a note, a suicide note. And apparently that worked, I guess.
Okay.
And another one of his friends drove him across the border to Mexico.
Okay.
So Ken Kesey spends like 8 or 9 months just chilling in Mexico, avoiding drug charges. Everyone thinks he's dead.
Okay.
He comes back to
This
the
is a
United
pretty
States.
great story.
This is excellent. He comes back to the United States, and despite the fact that he's wanted by the FBI, he starts going on TV and the radio to talk about all the weird stuff he's been doing.
Okay, that's kind of funny.
It's kind of great. Eventually, they find him, and everything I read said they find him. I'm like, how hard would it be to do that when he's on TV? Anyway, they...
Well, you know when they arrested Charles Manson? Because he's so tiny, he was hiding inside a cabinet in a kitchen.
Okay. Okay. So they catch up with Ken Kesey.
Okay.
He tells them he gets conditionally released because he tells them that he's going to do what he calls acid test graduation, which is where he and his friends try to achieve intersubjectivity without drugs. So they're just trying the normal hive mind. Something about this doesn't work. He gets arrested for marijuana possession again, and then they sentence him to a work camp in California.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this is the whole, just like
Impetus.
weird. Yeah. So he goes to work in California, to the work camp in California. He moves his family to Oregon, where I think they stayed for the rest of his life. He had like a farm in Oregon.
Yeah, he died in Eugene, Oregon in 2001.
Yeah, just a whole bunch of weird stuff. Here's some of the fun stuff. He He met and was really good friends with the Hells Angels. So they're like a biker gang, and introduced them to drugs as well. So there's also a book that you should check out called Hells Angels, The Strange and Terrible Saga of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs. It's by Hunter S. Thompson, who is also a very famous writer. He's also making friends with people like Allen Ginsberg and a lot of the like beat generation. Ken Kesey refers to himself as like a bridge between like the beat generation and the hippie generation.
Mm-hmm.
Allen Ginsberg has a poem about him called First Party at Ken Kesey's with Hell's Angels. Okay. Also a couple others. He's in a few.
That also makes sense because he was born in 1935, whereas a lot of baby boomers were born between like 1945 and 1960.
Yeah.
So that totally makes sense that he's the weird in between generation.
Yeah. That's true. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then here's my favorite part of this whole thing. He was very good friends when this whole thing happened with the band, the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm. They were called the house band for the acid test.
For the acid test, for the further and all of that stuff. So, super good friends with them. They were also at the time, I believe, going by the name The Wizards.
So dorky.
Which makes Roxanne so upset. Okay.
That's so dorky.
Alright, so he's with all of these guys. Now, his wife apparently gives him the go-ahead to father a child with a woman they called Mountain Girl.
That checks out.
Yep, that 100%. They call her Mountain Girl.
That tracks, yeah.
Yep. They name her Sunshine Kesey.
Obviously.
And she is raised by her mom, who later marries Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead.
Okay.
So Ken Kesey's Sunshine child is raised by, a bunch of deadheads.
That is such a hippie name.
It's so fun. I actually really love it.
Fun fact, my sister Lindsay, who was on the Game of Thrones episode, had just moved to a new town when my family moved to Arizona. And so on her first day of school, she's like, my name is Sunshine.
Nice. And
I'm not sure how... No. I don't know how long she tried to get away for it. It might have been a day.
Okay, so she tried the Anne of Green Gables thing.
Yes.
Where she's like...
I don't know if she said, my name is Lindsay, but can you call me Sunshine? Or she was just like, straight up, I am Sunshine.
Okay. So, anyway, for the rest of his life, he's pretty much a... Chill guy. Doesn't do a whole lot of crazy stuff. He does go to a Fish concert. And, that tracks as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he did, like, a song with Fish. Okay, yeah, one of
He tried his hand at acting when he was young.
Oh, did he? I didn't know this. And, he did teach at the University of Oregon for a really long time. Really interesting thing, one of his sons, Ken Kesey had been a wrestler, and one of his sons was also a wrestler.
Like in high school, not like
for U of O, the University of Oregon.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant like at a school, not like a professional wrestler.
No. Yes, like school wrestling. Although Ken Kesey was apparently so good that he could have gone to the Olympics, but he had like some sort of like shoulder injury.
Right. Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. So, yes, school level, but he could have been a contender. And then his son, also for USO, he was coming to a match at Washington State University. The bus like tipped over on an icy road, and his son ended up brain dead.
What?
Yeah. So they brought his son to Deaconess, which is in Spokane.
Is that the hospital?
It's the big hospital right off the freeway right there.
Okay.
Brought him to Deaconess. He was brain dead, so Ken and Faye, his wife, decided that they could donate his organs.
Whoa.
So his kid was like 20 and died. Man. And then Ken Kesey got really anti-military. He wrote a whole bunch of letters to like senators and stuff where he was very upset about the fact that we can spend so much on national defense and we can't even put seatbelts in school buses. So he ended up donating like $30-something thousand to buy the University of Oregon wrestling team a bus with like actual safety measures installed.
Bananas that we don't have seatbelts in buses.
Isn't that kind of crazy?
It always just kind of like, well, you're just gonna fly into the seat right ahead of you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Hope
they're
it doesn't
tall.
Flip over. I don't.
Yeah, it's very weird. I don't know.
It is really weird that there's no seatbelts in buses.
Right, because we're so concerned about having kids in the right, like, harnesses and the right
and then it's like, just get into this big metal box.
Yeah, it's fine. You'll have to do it every day, twice a day for 18 years, whatever.
Did you ride the bus?
You know what, I lived out of district, so I did not ride the bus.
I always walked to school.
Yeah. No, I lived, like, way out. You had to cross, like, 3 sets of train tracks to get to school and all.
So you had to go to the wrong side of the tracks, then go back again?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah. So,
Well, that's really sad.
yeah, it's really sad. But the rest of his life seems pretty, like, it passed pretty normally. He died in 2001 of complications with liver cancer. They built a statue for him to commemorate him, and, like, so the funniest thing is he's, like, reading to a bunch of kids. And I'm like, I can't even imagine.
Oh,
him
no,
reading to
no.
kids.
I know why. I know why.
Okay.
Okay. So, I was watching clips. Like I said, I fully, like, sat down and did a lot of this research about his crazy days, but I, like, was too annoyed to write it down. But I was watching old interviews of him last night, and he was on Charlie Rose in 1992.
Oh.
And you haven't seen Step Brothers, right?
No.
Okay, so I know it brings up this movie a lot, but in Step Brothers, like, the dad is obsessed with his new stepson, and just, like, whatever he says, he's completely delighted by.
Okay.
And Charlie Rose is, like, beside himself with glee that Ken Kesey is on his show.
Oh, okay.
So Ken Kesey will say anything, he's like, oh my god, it's so wonderful to have you here. But he was like, what are you up to now, Ken Kesey? And he's like, oh, I write kids' books, and then I drive around the country, and I read to kids. Because they're great audiences, and, like, I'm really committed to youth literacy.
Interesting.
And, like, everyone likes to be read to. Like, I just love writing stories for kids. And he said, like, when you read, like, serious fiction to adults, they get all pensive, but if you read them a kid's story, like, they get really engaged, and, like, that's just what I love to do.
Oh. That reminds me of a really great, this has nothing to do with that, just a really great quote from Philip Pullman where he basically says that, like, some material is too serious to write in adults' books. It has to be written for kids.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. You'll have to look up the exact quote. It's really good. Anyway, what a strange life.
I know.
Like, to go from that to...
And maybe an aside, but that then brings me to my favorite Oscar Wilde quote.
Okay.
Which is, if you want to tell somebody the truth, make them laugh, otherwise they'll kill you.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why there would be a statue of him reading to kids.
Okay.
That's what he dedicated his later life to.
That's so fascinating. So some of the people who donated to that project include Paul Newman,
Okay.
who was in the adaptation of Ken Kesey's other famous book, Sometimes a Great Notion,
Okay.
and Michael Douglas, who produced One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So he had some kind of big names behind that, which is interesting as well. The last thing I want to say about this bus, and then I'll leave it alone forever.
Okay.
The last thing about this bus is that, like, for some reason, it lived on Ken Kesey's farm. It fell into disrepair. It didn't work anymore. But it was, like, in some sort of, like, a swamp thing for some reason. So the Smithsonian Institute knocks on his door, rings his phone, and they're like, hey, Ken, we want your bus. Because we think it'd be really cool. They really want it. They really desperately want this bus. And Ken Kesey was like, no, you can't have my bus. But then he's like, well, yeah, sure, you can have my bus. And he tries to sell them a knockoff of his own bus.
Okay, that is funny. That's on brand. I like
great.
that. That's funny.
Yeah. And then later, his son Zane.
Named after Zane Grey.
Yeah. Who he was friends with.
The Western author.
Yeah. Larry McMurtry he was friends with. Super weird. Anyway, his son Zane and a friend of his pull it out. They had a Kickstarter in 2014 to, like, go further and do the bus again. And they got enough people to get on that bus that they did the whole trip again, and they made a documentary. They made a documentary.
What's it called?
Called Going Further. Yeah.
Okay.
There's tons of documentaries about the Merry Pranksters. There's also one called Magic Trip, which is funny in multiple ways, and you know it. It's a good pun. Good, solid pun.
Yeah. And
the BBC has one called Dancing in the Street. And all of these have actual footage from the Merry Pranksters. Okay. Which is cool. In the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, Tom Wolfe wrote, he's got this whole great thing about everything was becoming allegorical, understood by the group mind, and especially this. You're either on the bus or off the bus.
Okay.
And that's, like, the best encapsulation of that I could find.
It's obnoxious.
I know. Okay, so that's probably enough for Roxanne about Ken. Yeah.
Oh, your mom just called. She said your pizza rolls are ready. Like, go. I can't.
Oh, gosh. He also... Okay, this is really, for real, the last thing I'm going to bring up.
No, I loved... The whole thing... Ken Kesey doesn't necessarily annoy me. It's like...
It's the whole attitude.
It's the whole thing. Like, people say that they're born in the wrong time. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would have liked being a young adult during this time.
Oh, that's so funny, because I always think Well, it depends. If I had money, I think it would have been great. Mm-hmm. I would really like to be around in the 60s. Mm. There's some really good music going on, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Do I want to be on a bus with a bunch of crazy people? No. But
Think about the hygiene.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible.
A lot of patchouli.
Oh, patchouli's the worst.
I know.
Ugh, okay. Never mind. I take that all back. Okay, so, again, in the electric Kool-Aid acid test, Tom Wolfe is describing, and he says, a person has all sorts of lags built into him, Kesey is saying. One of the most basic is the sensory lag, the lag between the time your senses receive something and you're able to react. 1/30th of a second is the time it takes if you're the most alert person alive, and most people are a lot slower than that. We are all doomed to spend the rest of our lives watching a movie of our lives. We are always acting on what has just finished happening. It happened at least 1/30th of a second ago. We think we're in the present, but we aren't. The present we know is only a movie of the past, and we really never will be able to control the present through ordinary means.
Don't do drugs, kids.
It's not worth it. So that's my... Anyway, I just love that he was like, well, I'm watching a movie of my own life because I'm a 30th of a second behind, darn it.
Well, should we move on to the book?
We probably should, yeah.
So, after all of my poo-pooing of their nomadic lifestyle and their trust fund bus. Sorry, I'm being such a brat.
Trust fund bus is pretty funny. That would make an excellent
I didn't
band
realize
name.
that I had such a class conflict inside. Wow. So, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I loved this book.
It's fantastic.
I didn't read it in school.
Okay, so this is the first time you've read it.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
I loved it.
Oh, I'm so excited about this.
I loved it.
This is the first time that's ever happened where I suggested a book and you actually loved it the first time. That's
You
never...
sure?
I'm sure. That's
No,
never
Lolita.
happened. Oh, that's true. Okay.
That was before we did the podcast.
That's true.
I loved Lolita.
Okay, thank you. Twice. I have succeeded twice, folks.
I loved this book. Can you get you can get an audio version of it on Libby?
Yes, you can. That's what I listened to it this time.
I did upgrade again because to me, narrator really matters. If I know the narrator, I'm going to enjoy it a lot more because I listen to these mostly.
Okay.
And the narrator for mine on Audible was John C. Reilly.
What?
And it was amazing.
Okay, I need to start upgrading too. That's funny.
Oh my gosh, it was absolutely worth it.
Okay.
John C. Reilly, he did a fantastic job.
I get behind that 100%.
He's so good.
I can so see that. Okay.
So the book synopsis, briefly, it tells the story of a man named Randall McMurphy. Mm-hmm. What's his middle name?
P.
Randall P. McMurphy.
It might be Patrick.
Yeah, he's a guy in his 30s who had been at a work camp, and he gets sent to a mental institution in Oregon. And the premise is that he's probably faking it.
Most likely.
Is that for most likely he's faking it to get off the work farm.
Heavily implied.
Yeah, and so he's faking it so he can get kind of like a cushy life over at the mental institution. Mm-hmm. And he was in prison, or he was at this work camp for statutory rape. Are we supposed to like him right off the bat?
I have a hard time. I think in the movie you're supposed to like him.
Yeah,
I don't think
he's definitely really funny in the movie. I mean, he's funny in the book too.
Yeah, but I don't think in the book you're necessarily supposed to like him right at the outset.
Okay. And more important than Randall McMurphy is one of the most iconic villains of literature and film in the past 100 years, I think, which is Nurse Ratched.
Yeah.
Her first name's Mildred. She doesn't have a first name in the book.
No.
But in the movie, her first name is Mildred. I have a lot of thoughts about her.
Yeah.
People, when you see adaptations of her, it's like, who's the most evil authority figure you can ever think of?
Right.
Nurse Ratched.
Did you watch the show?
Yes.
Okay, I want to talk... Okay.
Yes.
I think we should talk about her when we talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Ratched a little bit later, but she's a really big part of this in adaptations.
Yes.
And I think, most people, even if they don't know the book, they know who Nurse Ratched is.
They know Nurse Ratched, for sure.
And they definitely think that she's, the face of evil. Right?
Yeah, she's the embodiment of all that is wrong with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he comes into this mental institution, and they have what they are called chronics and acutes. And chronics are men who may be like...
their brain functioning isn't enough to let them out into the world.
Yeah.
They're more on, like, the medical side of, right, institutionalization. Like, they physically can't cope with being outside
They are
the
not
hospital.
going to be, quote-unquote, cured and released. Like, this is where they need to live, to be taken care of. And then there are what are called the acutes. And acutes can turn to chronics. But acutes, the idea is that they're going to be, quote-unquote, cured and will be able to leave the institution eventually.
Yeah. They're usually there for mental illness.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
They usually don't have any, like, physical stuff going on.
Right. And some of them are criminals. Like, they're considered criminally insane, like McMurphy.
Who else is criminally insane?
I don't know.
I don't think...
There's one or two other people in the book I think it implies. I don't think it really says
But
other
it's not
people.
it's not like a medical prison.
No.
And as we find out later, and there's just going to have to be spoilers, there's no way to talk about it.
Yeah. This is 60 years old now, so.
Yeah, I read the 50th anniversary edition.
Yeah.
Was we find out that majority of them are there by their own volition. And they're not committed. There's only a few committed ones.
Right.
And so when we first meet this group of men, a ragtag team, Bad News Bears, they take group therapy every day, and they're all very beaten down because they are used to doing what the system wants them to do.
Right.
And this book is narrated by one of the inmates, and his name is...
Chief Bromden.
Yeah, I was just thinking, does he have a real first name?
I think he did. They mention it one time.
Okay. He's referred to as Chief Bromden, and he is a very, very large Native American, and everyone thinks that he is deaf and mute. So he's always watching everyone, and it is clear that he is mentally ill. He thinks that there are, like, listening devices everywhere. He's really paranoid.
I have some quotes I want to read you later.
Yeah, I have some quotes too. He thinks that, like, the doctors and the nurses are, like, implanting devices in him, and that it's sort of that paranoid schizophrenia. I wouldn't call it schizophrenia necessarily. That's kind of a catch-all term that they would use back then. But he's gone through electric shock therapy, and he spends a lot of his days just, like, mopping.
Yeah, they call him Chief Broom.
Yeah.
He sweeps.
Yeah. And there is a hierarchy in this hospital. So they are what are called the quote-unquote black boys. And they are the orderlies. They also work as toughs sometimes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're not construed as necessarily bad or good.
Yeah. They're kind of on the fence. They're, like, part of the machine, but they're also ground down by the machine. So they're, like, a weird in-between.
They're like the, like, they're getting along to get along. They're working in the system.
Yeah.
So there's them, and then there's the nurses that are overseen by Nurse Ratchet.
If you can't beat them, join them. There it is.
Yeah. And then there are the doctors, who are really, like, and then sort of like a board of doctors who make big decisions, but Nurse Ratchet's actually running the show.
Right. But it is very hierarchical. Like, there's men at the top echelons of this. The women are only nurses, and even though Nurse Ratchet does run it, her opinion doesn't really matter to the doctors.
They do respect her, though.
They respect her, but she'll, like, never be one of them.
Right.
There's some patriarchy happening.
Yeah, but I feel like they definitely respect her.
Yeah.
And they're scared of her.
Well, I think that's
I think
the
mostly
more.
scared of her. And so when McMurphy is inserted into this community, he really shakes things up because he questions rules. And at first it's civil, but by the end of the book, it's become complete
Anarchy?
bedlam.
Ah, there you go.
There's a lot of, like, vignettes, like, little, almost like short stories within it.
Yeah, I buy that.
Like, the time that they go fishing.
Right. Or, like, the therapy session. Or, the time they play basketball. I think that's only in the movie, and that's...
No, he teaches them basketball in the
Okay,
book.
I couldn't remember. But yeah, little sorts of, like, slice of life.
So basically he's like this rambunctious raconteur who is encouraging them to, like, live life.
Right. He's a larger-than-life sort of character, for sure.
Until it all goes terribly wrong at the end.
It does all go terribly wrong, so be ready to be upset by this book, I think.
It's deeply disturbing.
It is.
Especially when you know that a lot of it happened in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Asylums in the past were terrifying things. I think I read some research that said we went from like 150,000 committed people in like the 50s to like now we have like 30,000 people. But basically, like, asylums in the 50s were like, if you went into them, you did not come out. And they called them asylums. They weren't like institutions. They weren't usually trying to help you. It was kind of a scary, horrifying thing.
Like, by the 50s, they were trying to help, but basically until they had, I mean, there is a really fascinating history that goes back, like, forever of how society dealt with mentally ill people, or people they deemed mentally ill.
Yes.
Oh, I am actually currently reading a book called, it just came out, it's by Kate Moore, and it's called The Woman They Could Not Silence.
Ooh.
And it's about this, it's a nonfiction book about this woman named Catherine Packard, who was put into an asylum because she was questioning her husband, who was a preacher's religious views, and, like, wouldn't shut up. And so she got, like, thrown into an asylum and was able to get out, but, like, she showed that all these abuses were happening.
Right. But it's kind of a thing. I mean, it's even in pop culture now. Like, think about Beauty and the Beast. They throw Maurice into an asylum just because they don't want to make him trouble in the town.
Yeah.
Les Mis, they put, what's her face in an asylum? Joanna?
Do they?
Yeah, they absolutely do. They throw her in an asylum. They, like, cut off her hair and stuff. He has to, like, go rescue her. Because she won't marry the
Sweeney
beetle.
Todd.
We're talking about Sweeney Todd. Thank you. Sorry. In Sweeney Todd.
Yeah,
yes.
they put her in an asylum.
They put her in an asylum.
Yeah, so they thought that they were a lot better in the 50s, but they were doing electroshock, which was really just traumatic.
Yeah.
And then lobotomies became in vogue. And, like, I think lobotomies are maybe one of the most shameful part of American medical history. It could be that you're sexually promiscuous. It could be that you're mouthy. Like, basically, like, you're not fitting into what we want, and so they would
ice pick you.
They would put an ice pick up through your, either through your nose or through your eye, and they basically would, like, cut off a little
piece of your brain,
a little tiny piece of your brain that basically makes you human.
Right. But think about how little we know about the human brain today in 2022, and they were just cutting out pieces of people's brains without really knowing what that was going to do to people.
It basically leaves you a shell of a person.
Yes.
They famously did this to Rosemary Kennedy, who was mentally ill, but she also was sexually promiscuous. This wasn't fine, and, like, this was their solution.
Yeah.
And so...
Big yikes.
Yeah. So if you got a lobotomy, like...
It's
stripping you of your soul, almost.
Yeah. Yeah. You're never going to be the same human.
And that is the ultimate threat.
Yeah, and I think in the book it's used like a punishment.
Yeah, it's absolutely the ultimate threat. Like,
yes.
Okay, like, that's final option.
Like, we're done. Wash our hands of you.
What's interesting is also a time, like, where they're starting to figure out psychiatric medicine. But they were usually, like, way overdosing. So, like, a lot of the men are given pills every day, which usually are just, like, drugging them into a stupor.
Right.
And so a lot of the things like electroshock and lobotomies, people, they did do it well-meaning. They thought they were helping because we didn't have the medicine. So it was, I think it's barbaric, but they just didn't also have the meds that we have today. Now I'm getting way into it.
Armchair psychologist, let's go.
Well, you know, because they shut down a lot of these institutions in the 80s.
Right. But
also having medication allows people to be able to have happy, productive lives. But there were some really horrible things that came before it. So welcome to my TED Talk.
Yeah. So that's a lot of horrible stuff about what happens in this book. And it's pretty horrifying, it's pretty dark. But despite that, I just think it's one of the most well-written books I have ever read in my life.
It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And I think we very easily could have lumped it in with our beautiful icky books, where the subject matter is obviously pretty traumatic and scary and sad, but the writing is just chef's kiss perfect. So good. So, and I'm talking even back to the dedication. I love the dedication of this book so much. It says, "To Vic Lovell, who told me dragons did not exist, then led me to their lairs."
Love it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a perfect dedication. It's my second favorite dedication of any book.
Okay, after
Rita Brown in Ruby Fruit Jungle. Okay, I wrote it down just in case this came up. Okay, Rita Brown in Ruby Fruit Jungle. Dedicated to Alexis Smith, actress, wit, beauty, cook, kind heart, a reverent observer of political phenomena, etc. If I were to list her outstanding qualities, you, dear reader, would be exhausted before you get to page 1. So let me just say the above-mentioned woman took the time to give me a playful push in the direction of my typewriter. Of course, after you read the book, you may wish that she had pushed me in front of something moving faster than a typewriter.
That's fun.
It's fantastic.
I like
It's the
that.
best. It's my favorite dedication. Okay, my favorite part of the book, though, is that it's written by an unreliable narrator. Mm-hmm. And we really haven't talked about that. We haven't had a whole lot of them.
No. Clockwork Orange, maybe?
Clockwork Orange.
Lolita. Lolita is a perfect example.
Pretty much our other beautiful icky books are like this. So, this is being written by Chief, or narrated, I guess I should say, by Chief Bromden, who is very, very paranoid and very fascinated with machinery, especially. So, he thinks that they, like, bring fog in to obscure his vision. There's magnets in the floor to move them along the paths that they need to move them on.
He basically calls the whole institution the machine.
The Combine. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you pay attention to nothing else in this book, pay attention to the mentions of machinery. It's fascinating. It's really good. One of the very first things in here. They're mopping when I come out the dorm. All three of them sulky and hating everything. The time of day, the place they're at here, the people they got to work around. When they hate like this, better if they don't see me. I creep along the wall, quiet as dust in my canvas shoes, but they got special sensitive equipment detects my fear, and they all look up, all three at once, eyes glittering out of the black faces like the hard glitter of radio tubes out of the back of an old radio. Ooh. Oh, that's literally page 1, guys. Page 1.
Also, doesn't that make you think of the yellow wallpaper?
Yes.
He's creeping along the wall.
Yeah.
I also want to say, so I had that same quote written
Did you?
down.
Okay.
He wrote that on peyote.
Oh, great.
He was high on peyote when he wrote that paragraph.
Okay.
Doesn't that make a lot of
that makes so much sense.
I have that exact quote. He wrote that on peyote.
I see it. Okay.
I also love in that intro, the first time we meet Nurse Ratched, this is like, this visualization has just really been sticking with me. I think about it a lot. Mm-hmm. He says that she comes out and she's scolding the orderlies for talking and not working. Mm-hmm. And says she comes out and then her arms extend.
Yeah.
And she wraps her robotic arms around them 4 or 5 times and squeezes them.
Yeah.
And that was amazing.
Yeah. There's another one I had about her in there where he's describing her as a truck who like keeps getting bigger and bigger, like she keeps like adding parts and she's working the hinges in her fingers.
Oh, like a transformer or something.
Basically, right?
But I like that it's like, but she can go back to normal before anyone sees her.
Yeah.
Only I see it.
Nobody else sees, which is why it's an unreliable narrator, right? Because all of this is presented like it's really happening, but obviously this is inside his own head.
Yeah, he's like, she's super good at going back to normal before anyone sees.
Right. Yeah, I love she starts moving and I get back against the wall, and when she rumbles past, she's already big as a truck, trailing that wicker bag behind her in her exhaust like a semi behind a Jimmy Diesel. Her lips are parted and her smile's going out before her like a radiator grill. I can smell the hot oil and magneto spark when she goes past, and every step hits the floor she blows up a size bigger, blowing and puffing, roll down anything in her path. I'm scared to think what she'll do.
Oh, it gives me chills.
It's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Now imagine John C. Reilly reading that.
I know, I'm so bummed that I didn't
really
listen
good.
to John C. Reilly reading this. Oh my gosh. We should start talking about the movie, but I have one more thing I want to talk about.
Love it.
Okay, with this. If you pay attention to only one thing, pay attention to the machinery. If you can pay attention to 2 things, also pay attention to birds. And this is because the title of this book is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It comes from an old children's rhyme where part of it goes, William Matrimito, he's a good fisherman. He catches hens, puts them in pens. Some lay eggs, some lay none. 3 geese in a flock. Wire, briar, limber, lock. 3 geese in a flock. 1 flew east, 1 flew west. 1 flew over the cuckoo's nest. So, if you're paying attention, if you know this rhyme, it's a really old like folk song. I had to look it up. I've never, and there's a couple different versions of it out there, but if you go with this version, which I think is the most common one that I found, there are tons and tons of connections. The cuckoo's nest is the hospital. The big nurse is the good fisherman who catches hens and puts them in pens.
Okay.
They even talk about in one of their therapy sessions, McMurphy calls them a pecking party.
Right.
Which is where hens get together and like kill one hen.
Yeah.
Which is basically what they do in that scene. McMurphy's the goose. He calls himself the bull goose loony, like the second he gets in there. And then Chief Bromden is the one plucked out of the nest. He's doing a lot with the birds.
Right.
And with that particular children's rhyme.
God, it's a good book.
It's so good.
And just to sort of, I really finish the synopsis, is that it all goes wrong.
McMurphy keeps pushing and pushing and pushing Nurse Ratched because he thinks that it's like prison and that there is, he's like, yeah, I'm good. I have 6 more months. I can do this. I'll mess with her for like my own enjoyment. And then he finds out that no, he is committed. There is no leaving until she decides. And eventually it gets so bad that he is first given electroshock therapy. And by the end of the book, he is lobotomized. And so this is just all spoilers.
Yeah.
And then Chief Bromman, after the suicide of a young man on the ward because of Nurse Ratched's threats to him.
Because of McMurphy. It's a whole, like, it comes around.
Yeah. Bromman ends up smothering him with a pillow and then escaping himself.
There it all is.
Let's talk about the movie, and then we'll talk about how Nurse Ratched is portrayed.
Okay.
So the movie was also an immediate smash hit. Originally, there was a play that came out in about 1964, and it starred Kirk Douglas, and he was obsessed with this book. He bought the rights to it, and he was, just like The Giver, he was planning to make...
Oh, it's exactly like that.
Yeah, he was planning to make a version of it, because who bought it? The Giver. Jeff Bridges.
His dad bought it. And wanted to be, and then it was Jeff Bridges.
Kirk Douglas bought it. He wanted to play McMurphy. He aged out of the role, and then Michael Douglas,
his son
in the 70s, like, took over, basically.
He produced it. He produced.
It stars Jack Nicholson, who was at the height of his fame at that moment. They had to delay production because he was doing so many movies. This is like 5 years before he did The Shining.
Right. And they didn't want him in The Shining because of this. Or Stephen King didn't want him in The Shining.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we talked about this. So Stephen King thought that because it was so close to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, didn't want him in The Shining because he didn't want people to think that that character was crazy from the get-go.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So Stephen King actually didn't want him because of this movie.
Oh.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah, because McMurphy is like a nicer version of Jack Torrance.
Well, nicer... he does a lot of not nice things.
Not nicer.
Out, like, in the world.
Happier?
Yeah,
full of life?
Carefree and happy-go-lucky?
Yeah. I don't know.
He's different.
Still bad different. So, it took a while, but finally Fox Studios picked up the movie, and they wanted to rewrite the ending of the film so that McMurphy lives, which...
Boo.
That just ruins everything. Yeah, so they did.
Even knowing that ruins.
Yeah, but the actors who almost played the role, Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, they really wanted Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds. I can't even imagine.
No, he's too, like...
He's too goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But McMurphy can be goofy.
Yeah, but I wouldn't buy the menacing side of him because he's too goofy.
Yeah, I don't...
Yeah. Even Gene Hackman, I'm like, I can't...
I could see Gene Hackman.
I can't quite see it.
I could not see Marlon Brando. Also, he would have been too old in the 70s to play him.
That's true.
They had a really hard time finding a Nurse Ratched because the actresses they tried to get, Anne Bancroft, Angela Lansbury.
Oh, my Lanta.
Yeah, Faye Dunaway.
Excellent.
They all were like, this is too evil of a character. I don't want to be portrayed this way.
I can see that from Angela Lansbury, yeah.
Yeah. So they finally got Louise Fletcher. And so, for the first time in 40 years, when this movie came out, it swept all of the main Oscars. So that's Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenwriter, or like in all the
Adapted
best actors.
Screenplay.
And yeah, it won everything. That hadn't happened
like
since
3 times.
Yep. So first time was in 1935 with It Happened One Night, then One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then in 1990 with Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. And I think that's it.
That's it. When it swept everything.
Yeah.
So this was an immediate hit. And Louise Fletcher wanted to play Nurse Ratched, unlike what the director wanted. He wanted her to play the face of evil.
Okay.
And she plays it like, no, she doesn't think she's evil. She's doing her job.
Yeah.
And I think that comes across wonderfully.
Curing people. Darn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her hairdo, also amazing.
What do they call it? Like victory
rolls?
Yeah.
What I love about her hair, it's so great. And I was watching one of the documentaries, like the making of. Her hair shows a person who is stuck in a moment in time. And they make a point to say that she was a World War II nurse.
Yeah.
And so victory rolls are, of course, from World War II. And so she's stuck in the past of how things are supposed to run.
Nice.
They also look like horns.
I didn't quite...
Like Satan.
They do. I didn't quite pick up on that, but that's really cool to have her... I did pick up on that in the show.
In the movie?
In Ratched, which we'll talk about. But I didn't in this film.
Yeah, so that also makes sense. Like,
okay.
And I like that kind of thing in older movies because you don't think about... Like, today we can see somebody with dated hair from, like, the 90s, but it's harder to, like, watch a movie from the 60s and be like, oh, that person has out-of-date hair.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So
funny. I love that. So I actually have the quote. The director is saying what Louise Fletcher helped him realize. I originally wanted her to be the personification of evil, but it evolved into, I slowly started to realize that it would be much more powerful if it's not this visible evil, that she's only an instrument of evil. She doesn't know that she's evil, as a matter of fact, believes that she's helping people.
Nice.
I think that's true. I think it's not until, like, McMurphy really starts pushing her buttons that she gets vindictive.
Right. And then she turns into an everyday sadist.
Yes!
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up that term.
Oh, good.
Everyday sadist. She is an everyday sadist.
She absolutely is.
Which we learned from this training that we do at the library.
Yeah, from Ryan Dowd.
Ryan Dowd.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, he does these great online courses. And, yeah, an everyday sadist is the person who wants to see you fail.
Yeah. Or who wants to make themselves bigger than you.
This training was not how to be an everyday sadist.
It was how not to be. It was to avoid being a Nurse Ratched type.
How to be a nice librarian.
Yeah.
Yes, so absolutely. She's an everyday sadist. Do you think she's a personification of evil?
I don't think so.
I don't think evil's the right word.
No. I think to be the personification of evil, you have to know that you're doing harm and not care. Whereas I do think that she is doing harm, but she does justify it in a weird way. She does think she's making these people better for society.
She thinks she's teaching them a lesson for their own good.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, I don't think she's a personification.
I think she's manipulative.
Do I still hate her? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think she's unbending and manipulative.
Yeah.
But she's fascinating.
She is.
And like we talked about, she's such a popular character.
Oh, yeah.
So there's this new show, Ratched. Did you watch it?
Okay, so I watched the first episode but now I'm like, I have to watch the rest of the show.
Oh, I'm hooked. It's so
fantastic.
Creepy. Yeah. And it's Sarah Paulson, who's amazing. It's a Ryan Murphy joint. He's the guy who did, like, Glee, and he does all the really fantastic American crime stories. Mm-hmm. Always with Sarah Paulson. Oh, American Horror Story.
Yeah.
And it's the story of Mildred Ratched in the 50s. Mm-hmm. So before she comes... Oh, actually late 40s.
Yeah. It's long before One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's
like
when
she's a younger woman.
Her, what do you call that?
Origin story.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah. It's really good.
It's fantastic. Okay. I'm glad you watched it because I was watching this and I was like, Roxanne would love this costume. She would love the hats. She would love the like,
gloves match the hats.
The gloves.
Match the shoes.
Mm-hmm. I really like, it's all like very solid color palette against like really sterile, like black and white, but kind of Art Deco-y hospital. And there's like some fantastic lighting in it where it like shifts like hues of greens to like imply weird stuff about Nurse Ratched. I think it's fantastic. It's
gorgeous.
Yes.
And she plays it so subtly. I can't recommend it enough. It's on Netflix right now.
Yeah. There's only one season.
So far.
There's supposed to be a second one, but there's only one season
now.
No,
it's like 2021. They're planning for 2022.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I thought it had been a couple years and it like got dropped.
No,
so
it's brand
I'm
new.
so glad it's coming.
Brand new.
Okay.
So, anything more about Nurse Ratched?
Only that she is... So this film is, like, number 20 on the AFI 100 movies list. Mm-hmm. So it's really highly ranked by them.
That's why I first watched it, because I was working my way through that a couple years ago.
I do remember that. It's also been preserved by the Library of Congress National Film Registry.
Tight.
Okay. But Nurse Ratched, apparently the American film industry also has a list called 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains. Mm-hmm. And she is, like, number 5 on their list of, like, the all-time best heroes and villains. Mm-hmm. So.
I mean, and you know, as you say that, it's like, yeah, she also did cause a man to get lobotomized.
Yeah.
I think that's why she's so fascinating, because you can look at her intentions in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. She's a very ambiguous character. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But she's fun. In a horrifying way.
Yeah, I could talk about her all day.
Who do you like better, Louise Fletcher or Sarah Paulson? Like, portrayal-wise.
I think it's hard to
compare.
Yeah, because Sarah Paulson has to base her performance a little bit on Louise Fletcher.
That's true. I think I like that show better than I like the movie, just because I really like the visual, like, glory of it. It's amazing.
Sumptuous.
Thank you. Great.
Also horrifying and gory. It's a lot going on.
Also those things.
It's great. You should watch it.
It's also got, I mean, like, Cynthia Nixon's in it, Vincent
Yeah.
D'Onofrio's in it.
Yeah.
Corey Stoll, like, a lot of good people are in it.
She also was in Futurama, Nurse Ratched, as, like, a scary robot. The
Nice.
cartoon. Anything else about Nurse Ratched?
No, not that I can think of.
Oh, so just a few more things. They actually filmed the movie at an Oregon State hospital that had psychiatric patients in it as extras.
They're in the movie.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor in the film is played by the actual director of that medical facility,
Yep, so the doctor was actually played by the doctor.
which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. And the actors would all, like, live there, and they did a lot of, like, candid filming, so the actors never knew if they were actually going to be on film at that moment or not.
Oh,
So there was a lot of improv. It kept everyone really engaged.
that's interesting.
I did feel bad because Louise Fletcher said she felt so left out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because they all became super close, but it definitely was like a boys' club, and she's like, I was so jealous. These guys were all having so much fun. And she tells this story of, like, stripping down to her underwear one day to, like, show them that she wasn't Nurse Ratched.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, I think that I was trying to make a point. She doesn't say if it worked or not.
Okay, yeah. She's like, I'm fun, darn it.
Yeah, she basically was like, I'm fun. People say I'm fun.
People like me. I can't believe that so far we haven't mentioned the love of your life, Danny DeVito.
Oh, he's
How
he's
have
only
we
30
not?
in it.
He's so young. I didn't even recognize him in it.
No, and
Unrecognizable.
it's Christopher Lloyd's first movie.
Yeah. And Brad Dourif's first movie, too.
Who's he?
He plays Billy Bibbit.
Oh, I love Billy Bibbit.
Yeah, but, like, later on, he's in stuff later on, too.
Who does he go on to play
Oh,
later?
later on. He's in a lot of stuff that I've seen that I couldn't really name, but he's in
Like a
this
character
one,
actor?
yeah, really horrifying episode of Criminal Minds
Ooh.
that, like, still sticks with me to this day. That I'm
Okay.
like, ooh, that guy's crazy. That I've always liked. So, he's an interesting
Oh, he
human.
was so good.
He's very good.
Oh, and Chief Bromden was played by Will Sampson, who's fascinating. He has paintings in the Smithsonian. He's a professional painter.
What?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
he is part of the Muskogee tribe, and he is 6 feet 5 inches tall.
Wow.
And
Did they put him
he
in
wasn't
lifts or anything for this?
no,
Oh.
he wasn't an actor before or after.
Okay. I mean, Jack
he-
Nicholson's not super tall, but
Basically, like, they found a man who
a really
fit.
tall Native American guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
they go on and on about it in the documentary. That's on the 2-disc edition that we have at the library.
Oh.
About the making of it. So they found somebody who fit the bill, and then he was amazing.
Cool. Yeah, he's great in it.
Well, it was kind of funny because they're like, so we found this guy who looked perfect for the role, but we're like, can we act? And they're like, wait, he doesn't talk.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, fun fact, Angelica Houston has a small cameo. Did you know about this?
No.
So you know when they steal the boat?
Yeah.
A big difference between the book and the movie is that in the book, he actually gets permission to take everyone on
Well,
it.
kind of.
He, like, is planning it for a while.
He plans it, but then when they get there, they don't have the permission slip, so he still takes the boat.
But he tried it. Like,
He tried.
They didn't escape from the
He
asylum.
tried to go through diplomatic channels. Yes.
But in the movie, they just steal a school bus.
Yes. Run away to the boat.
You think they'd get a lot more trouble. Then they have, like, this fun day out.
Yeah.
Like, baby's day out. But anyway, so...
Yes. Sorry, Angelica Houston.
On
Is she
the-
on the dock?
Angelica Houston was, like, an onlooker on the dock because she was dating Jack Nicholson at the time. And, oh my god, I have to tell you one more thing.
Yeah.
This is... Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I want to quote my source. I'm getting a lot of information from the podcast Unspooled,
Okay.
which is, like, like, an actor and a film critic, and they talk about
Nice.
movies. I think I've used them before as a source,
You
but
have.
they're great. Okay, during the filming of this, Jack Nicholson found out from a Time magazine reporter who was like, hey, I want to do a profile on you. And I was doing background. And they were like, did you know that your mom's not really your mom?
What?
It was one of those things where she was a
No.
teen mom.
Yeah.
And so he thought June was his sister. And his grandparents were his parents.
Oh.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
His mom had him.
Right.
The grandparents
Pretending he's
raised him alongside his mom, who was
And
his
he
sister.
didn't know.
But she was dead by the time he found out.
Oh no.
Oh!
But also, like, to have
That happens a lot to serial killers.
Yeah, it does.
Like, I think
a lot.
it happened to Ted Bundy.
I think it did happen to Ted Bundy.
It can really mess you up.
Yeah.
That's why I'm scared of Jack Nicholson.
Yeah. Well, I think he's a scary dad vibes dude.
I know.
I stole this from you. That's the last time we talked about him. You're like, scary dad vibes. And I'm like, yes, now I can't think anything else when I see him.
Is this the third movie he's been in that we've talked about? The Shining.
The Shining?
This one?
This. I don't know that we've talked about
I feel like
it.
there's another one.
Hello.
Anyway, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was dealing with that and then went into filming this movie.
Yikes.
Another fun fact, Swedes really love this movie. People in Sweden love this movie. They played it in theaters on a regular rotation for 11 years.
Wow.
They just love it.
Here's my other fun fact.
Okay.
They almost got Shelley Duvall to play Candy.
Oh, yeah?
And
Candy is the sex worker who they take on the boat.
Yeah, but that would have been... She ends up working with him very closely in The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been... And another member of that cast is also in The Shining with him. I can't remember who.
Oh, it's Scatman Crothers.
Yeah.
It's the orderly who they, like, pay off to let him have a party in the ward.
Yeah. So, lots of little Shining...
It's The Shining.
It
Yeah.
is The Shining. Lots of little connections.
Yeah. Do you have any other fun facts?
Not about those, no.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the biggest difference between the movie and the book is that Chief Bronson isn't the narrator and that they steal the school bus and go on the fishing trip
Right.
instead of getting permission.
And I'm actually bummed. I think if this movie got made now...
By David Fincher.
Let me start here. Ooh, yes. I think if this movie got made
Right, David
now...
Fincher?
Yeah, it would be fantastic. Because now, if you did this film, you would make Chief Bromden the narrator, like the viewpoint character, and you would do all of the mechanical things
Yes.
that he actually thinks are happening.
Yes.
So you can make it a very creepy, sort of mental, very interior movie now, which they couldn't have done then.
Right.
So I don't like that they switched the protagonist from Bromden to McMurphy.
Yeah, you're right. That absolutely is the biggest part. It's like, we're not seeing it through the lens of somebody who is mentally ill.
Right. So I want this movie now. David Fincher.
That'd be
Probably
good.
Timothée Chalamet, because he's in everything. Not McMurphy, but he'd be one of the guys.
I
He
feel
could be Billy Bibbit.
Yes.
Oh.
Also, in the original play, Gene Wilder played Billy Bibbit.
Rock on. Okay.
Could you see that?
Yeah.
Billy Bibbit is like the very sensitive boy who
He's young.
kills himself after Nurse Ratched like humiliates him.
I can see that. I buy
I
it.
think Timothée Chalamet would be amazing. Who do you think would be a good McMurphy? I mean, John C. Reilly, but
John C. Reilly would be fantastic. That one's a little bit harder for me.
Tom Hardy?
Tom Hardy would be excellent. But I also think Keanu Reeves needs to be somewhere in this film. And also Nicolas Cage. That's like my superstar movie lineup. Those are the people I want.
I feel like I'm really missing somebody who could be good for McMurphy, though.
I'm sure there's got to be somebody good.
Who's like funny but can be a little scary. I mean, Tom Hardy can be funny and scary.
Oh, and Pete Davidson could be in there too.
Ugh.
I know, but it's not McMurphy.
Yeah.
We're getting there. Think about it for a second. We'll get there.
Ooh, this is a fun thought exercise.
I think we should always do
Who would be
this.
Nurse Ratched today?
Oh.
Because it can't be Sarah Paulson. It has to be a little bit older.
Yeah, I almost feel like it would be a good one for like...
Judi Dench.
That's too old. Almost like Rose Byrne.
Ooh, because she's supposed to be really beautiful.
Yeah.
Not beautiful.
I would take Rose Byrne for that one. Or
She could be good. If
who's
we're
the
going
lady
a little
who's married
older.
to Judd Apatow? Oh no, not her. She'd be bad.
What about Kirsten Dunst?
I do not like her.
Okay, so she'd be a good villain.
No, I mean I think she's a bad actress. She'd be terrible.
Oh, I disagree.
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone, I don't know. I can't see her being serious enough.
Okay, write in. Tell us who would make your perfect Nurse Ratched.
Yeah, let's like really think about this.
I'm
and talk
serious.
about it
Yeah,
next time.
we'll bring it up again. I swear.
But I think Tom Hardy would be good.
I think that's the perfect choice.
Okay, I'll wrap this up with one last thing, and I know we didn't even talk about the racism and misogyny of it all. And if it is, that could be like a whole other podcast.
Yes, we could go hard into that. There's a lot of it.
Yeah, we could take up a whole nother hour to talk about if it is, if so, why.
Right. We know it's there.
Yeah. But last thing is that Ken Kesey hated the movie. He was upset that Chief Bromden wasn't the narrator, and so he refused to see it, but he said he has kind of seen it through osmosis because it's on TV all the time.
He has never like sat down to watch it, but he's seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that he thinks it's generally an okay movie, except for the fact that Chief Bromden is not narrating.
Yeah, but it's like
kind of
that's too much of a thing to overlook.
Yeah, I agree with him.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my recommendations if you like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
You have to read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test because it deals with the whole Ken Kesey backstory, whatever. You also have to read On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Partly because it's part of that, like, Beat Generation thing, but also because the protagonist was inspired by Sir Speed Limit, the driver of Further. Who I believe is also a member of the Grateful Dead. So anyway, that's fun.
I just thought of a new username that I want to keep in my back pocket, Lady Speed Limit.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should also read Sometimes a Great Notion, which is Ken Kesey's favorite of his novels. He calls it his magnum opus.
It's about a logging family in Oregon, right?
Yeah. I also recommend Slaughterhouse-Five, just because it also deals with someone who is an unreliable narrator. He's a time-traveling soldier who was, like, an exhibit at an alien zoo, so it's kind of, like, off-the-wall, bizarre, weird time travel stuff. So that one's fun. The last one I think you should read is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath.
Okay, pro tip.
Okay.
Do not read The Bell Jar during finals week of college.
Oh, that would wreck you for sure.
That was not smart of me.
Did you not study at all?
No, it's just that it's about a young woman who's suffering from mental illness and incredible stress over what's going to happen in her life. So, like, if you're 20 and you're in, like, a stressful time of your life, wait till after finals to read it. Yeah.
I will say another pro tip. I did listen to the best narrator for this one. I listened to it on audio.
Bell Jar?
Yeah. Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Oh, that would be good.
She's so perfect for that thing. I tried to read this a couple years ago and I wasn't in the right headspace for it. So I listened to it a couple weeks ago.
I was in too much of a headspace to read it.
You have to hit it.
It messed me up.
Just right. So I listened to it a couple weeks ago and I'm in a better space, I think, to listen to it. But B, I can't even imagine just trying to read it in my own voice. Maggie Gyllenhaal is that character.
Really?
I can't imagine anyone else.
And you know why she's so good is because that she was in Mona Lisa's Smile, where she plays a girl in college with issues. I don't know.
There we go.
From the 50s.
Yeah.
That's how I'm wrapping it up.
But this is also, like, right around the same time period as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So they're very similar thematically, I think.
And it's vaguely autobiographical of Sylvia Plath.
Yes. So,
did they ever make a movie of The Bell Jar?
I don't know. We'll find out, because I would do that in a heartbeat.
It's one of my favorite books. Yeah. Highly recommend.
Me too.
Then the book I mentioned before, The Woman They Could Not Silence, which is brand new from Kate Moore. We have it at the library. That's a nonfiction if you're interested. And there is another book I just ordered for the library. It's like the history of asylums.
Cool. Yeah. I did see you order that.
Yeah. So Michaela sees all the books I ordered out because she's in tech.
The best thing about it is I always know it's you before I see the name on the order.
What gives it away? It's like women's history.
It's women's history. That lipstick one that you ordered, I was
the
like,
Red
this
Menace.
It was 100% Roxanne. If it's anything, lens of history through women's eyes, Hollywood, or like Hollywood spin-off. I usually know
true crime as well.
True crime as well.
I don't order a lot of true crime for the library.
No, you don't. But the others, I usually know it's you, and I think it's hilarious.
Ooh, I did order a new graphic novel that just came in called The Murder Book.
Oh, yes.
It's a graphic memoir of, like, why women love true crime.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the count of 3, did you like the book or the movie better? 1, 2, 3. The book.
Book. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but the movie was really good.
Fantastic. And Ratched is just...
Chef's Kiss. Watch it. It's on Netflix.
Excellent.
And I'll try to order it for the library once it's on DVD.
Yep.
Promise.
Okay.
So check out our online catalog. You can always give us a call at the library. If we can't find it, we'll track it down through Interlibrary Loan. And happy reading.
Happy watching. See you next time.
See you next time.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Bum, bum, bum.
Alright, now we can carry on. Nearly so much of a success. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm. Okay, fine.
Okay. You good to go?
Let's find out.